You are listening to Weekend Debrief, a podcast of Grace Church in Dallas, Oregon, where we look back at the events and activities of the weekend in our church community and the world and talk about them in light of the gospel. Thank you for listening. Well, welcome to Weekend Debrief. Pastor Dave here with
Pastor Wes.
And excited to join you again to talk about ministry and things going on here at the church.
Yeah.
So
No questions this week.
Nope.
And
I think that's because Pastor David preached, he explained everything. No one had any questions.
He did. Totally makes sense.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the message and just vision for youth ministry, which really ties into just the overall vision for the church.
Yeah. I think you did a really nice job wrapping up this short series, just looking at ministry here at Grace, and talking about the building project, but not really talking about the building project.
Right.
That's an application of everything we talked about. But really starting with that week 1 in Acts 2, we talked about the vision of making disciples, and that's really the ministry of youth ministry, right?
And I think one of the things that I've really liked about just in these 3 weeks that we have talked about the building is that it's not that we need the new building or the new space in order to do ministry.
Right.
It's not changing our mission at all. But what it does allow us to do is it allows us to be more effective.
Yeah.
And I think it actually allows us to take that next step to not that we're interested in becoming large and having a gigantic youth group or just a huge church, but allows us to take that next step to do what we've been called to do and do it well.
Right. No, I agree. We've said from the beginning, we don't really have a vision of becoming a mega church by any means, or some massive, like the biggest church in Dallas or anything like that. We want to be healthy. We want to be effective. We want to make disciples. And if we're doing that, I think there's some growth that can come from that.
Right.
But that's not the goal. It's growth.
Yeah.
The goal is to make disciples. And so, everything we're doing with the building, I mean, I can point to each part of it, and there are specific things that it addresses. So we're not building a massive sanctuary.
Right.
Because we want to get bigger. We're reorienting the sanctuary primarily because we want a larger foyer for people to interact and have relationships and connect. And we actually think that by rotating the sanctuary like we're proposing, that will actually it'll make the church feel in a way smaller, and closer together.
It gives it that more intimate feel. Right.
Because, right now, when I'm standing in the front, it's about, to the back wall of the balcony, it's probably 18, 20 rows. Yeah. And up, high.
Right.
And people are mainly staring at the backs of the heads in front of them.
Yeah.
Whereas what we're proposing is, I think it's like 7 or 8 rows to the back. It kind of wraps around the stage. Yeah. So I'm much closer to everyone. Whoever's on stage is much closer to the back row. As you kind of look around the sanctuary, you're going to be looking across and seeing faces of other people because it's circled around a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so it should, and instead of having a balcony group and a main level group, and everyone's together. And so all of and then the foyer and those spaces are essential. A new youth center so that kids can be connecting and feel like they belong, and that this is their church, not just their parents' church.
Right.
This is their church, and they have relationships with people here, and they're able to invite friends and be proud of their church when they invite friends, not like, okay, we're going to go into this dark, smelly, cramped youth house. Right. But hey, trust me, it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, right.
But no, there's something that they are proud of, that they can invite their friends to, and that we're showing the value we place on youth and students. Yeah. But not only that, but it's a youth and community center. So use for all kinds of things. Yes, it's the youth space. Yeah. But in the times the youth aren't using it, it'll be used for many other things. Yeah. And so I think all this goes back to making disciples. Yeah. And being more effective at that. And we think that if our facilities are a tool that can be used to make disciples, just like many things are a tool. But for us in the Western church, it's an essential tool. It's a necessary tool. And one that we want to, and not only that, we in looking at our facilities, we were at a point when we first started this project where we either did something to update our facilities, or we were going to start dumping large sums of money into simply maintaining what we have. And instead, we want to be proactive and enhance and maximize what we have, not just maintain what we have.
Yeah, it's and God has been extremely gracious for, it's funny, at the start of every like summer season, there's kind of this holding your breath when the air conditioners get turned on, like, all right, is the system going to work again this year?
Is this the year we don't have air conditioning?
And the same thing when the heat gets turned back on. Is this the year that the boiler system goes? And
good news, it's supposed to be 100 degrees this Sunday, and the air conditioner does work.
Yes, so that is excellent
news. Yes.
So, hey, I'm wondering if we can kind of unpack just a little bit and maybe talk just for a short time on something that David had mentioned, and I think is really clear in Deuteronomy, and that is the responsibility of the parents versus the responsibility of the church.
That's good.
So, sometimes there's, and maybe it was, I think maybe growing up, I came into church late in middle school time, but there was kind of this idea, and even saw it later on, but that the job of the parents was to get the kids to church, and then the church takes care of the spiritual things, and then we just do the family things. That's not the picture that's painted in Deuteronomy, and David even talked about that. So, while that may be kind of uncomfortable for some parents, I guess where do you see the value of that? How do we continue to move forward and not just, I think it's parents, yes, but then also here's a great opportunity for grandparents and aunts and uncles and kind of the family unit.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. So what we see in Deuteronomy 6 is the call of God through Moses to the people to center their lives around the Word of God. And so then that puts the responsibility on parents to teach their kids. And even later, after what David read, it talks about when your kids ask, why do we do these things, right? So as you're teaching, the kids are wondering, okay, why do we do this? Why do we celebrate these feasts or whatever, or why, whatever questions come up, that you're able to say, well, we do this because we serve a God who brought us out of Egypt. We serve a God who, has given us this nation, and we are His people. And so it's God at the center, and really we trust that at the end of the day, God is the one responsible to save our kids, right? But then the first responsibility then under God rests with the parents to be raising their kids up. But then we see this is told to the whole greater community of God, that this isn't families in isolation. So you can go way far, I don't need the church. I'm going to do this on my own. We're going to have a home church, and I'm going to disciple my kids and whatever. Well, we don't see that in Scripture either. Instead, we see, the family, yes, is primary, but the family is part of a greater family, the people of God. And, there's that famous quote from years back, it takes a village. Well, it doesn't take a village, it takes a church, right? It takes the people of God. So for in the Old Testament, it took a nation, right? That these families, with the help of the community around them, were raising their families, their kids to follow the Lord. And when that went well, we see great success of the next generation picking up the mantle and continuing it. Often what we see in the Old Testament is that's not passed on. And so the next generation, doesn't know the Lord, isn't following the Lord, and we see the fallout of that. And so I think it's the same is true today, that we are to center our lives around God. God is the one who saves, but we were given the ministry of making disciples. And for kids in the church, those who are tasked with the ministry of discipling their kids, first and foremost are the parents, father and mother, and then outside the parents, it would be aunts and uncles, grandparents, and that was assumed in Bible times, because you didn't move on. They just kept adding on to the house, right? And you'd be right there. So yeah, extended family, but then that greater family of God. That's why it was cool on Sunday to do that child dedication,
right? Yeah.
Where we as a church said, yes, we commit to doing our best to help the Fuller family this time, raise Henry to know the Lord. We're gonna pray that at a young age he comes to a personal relationship with Jesus, and receives salvation. And we can't save anyone, but we're gonna do everything we can.
Right.
We're gonna give our time, resources, skills, whatever, to help this family as best we can raise Henry to know the Lord. So that plays out then through youth ministry.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's the thing, is that there will be some people within the church body that are closer to the Fuller families that might have that influence, that one-on-one influence, and maybe have more so than others. But part of that commitment, I think you really nailed it, is that it is continuing on the ministry of the work, or the ministry of the church. So by continuing to give regularly, by continuing to volunteer and to serve in those aspects, so that children's ministry, youth ministry, adult ministry later on, all of those things that we're able to do those things to pour into each other's lives. So it's not necessarily meaning that I have to go pick out one of the kids that I know that have been dedicated and sit down, and we're gonna have a Bible study lesson after church, because that's what. Well, no, that's not what we're talking about. There's other ways that we contribute and help raise up those children.
Yeah, so we've got all kinds of people. We've got Sunday school teachers and group leaders, and in the youth group we've got leaders, and then outside of that, it's praying for the families, or those connected with the Fullers, coming alongside them and encouraging them, and when they have needs, providing meals for them, or giving advice to them. It's the like we see in Titus, it's the older reaching down to the younger and saying, hey, I've walked a mile in your shoes before, and I'd love to share what I've learned through my successes and failures with you, and how to raise your son or daughter to know the Lord. And it's all those things. So it really is that's the vision of our church, is discipleship, which means seeing people come to Christ and then walk with Christ for the rest of their life and grow in Him, and then reproduce in someone else. So it should be a snowball effect of multiplication, right? And so that's our vision. That's the vision for youth ministry, investing in parents so that their kids can know the Lord, but also investing in the lives of those students directly through adult leaders, through discipleship, mentorships, through teaching of God's word and the gospel, on a regular basis, and all of those things. And again, facilities is a tool that can enable that or hinder that. And we want to build a new facility to enhance our ministry to students. No, that's good. Little side note, just on the building side, did receive notification this last week that lumber costs are coming down. Right.
So that's good.
So we're quoted at basically the height of cost.
You're right.
And so the hope is that we can get it. I mean, that 1.2 million for the youth center, that we get that down. Our original hope was kind of high hundreds of thousands. Not. We really wanted it under $1 million, and then the price has just outpaced that. There was no way we could have done that. But hopefully that comes back down under that $1 million mark. And then for the rest of phase 2, that 2.2 million. Again, we were thinking that would be kind of in the mid ones. And so maybe that will come down at some point. But I know Jody Herndon is hard at work looking at other options to save funds. We've got all the sweat equity opportunities, especially with the youth center. But that 1.2 didn't account for any sweat equity. And I think we got well over 10% of the last project was donated in time or resources. So I mean, we really are hopeful that through the sacrificial giving of our people, that we're going to raise a substantial amount of those funds. But then also through the work of our people, that we're going to get that price tag down, and hopefully reduce costs in lumber and things. And then if we did look at borrowing anything, it would be a very small sum that we know we could pay off, and
Right.
it would be a low to no risk loan.
Yeah.
Simply to get the project started sooner,
Right.
so that we don't see inflation outpace us again.
Yeah, and that borrowing is tied into those
pledges.
those giving cards, the pledges that are that we'll be collecting the end of July.
Right. So the way it works is we're asking people to pledge for 3 years. So that means some people will give a lump sum up at the beginning,
Right.
But not everyone, which means we don't have cash in hand day one.
Yeah.
So we may, like we did with the last phase, borrow against pledges, knowing that over the next 3 years we'd pay it off with pledges.
Yeah.
And that's what we did last time, paid it off 9 months early.
Right.
So that would be the only scenario in which we would take out a loan, is if we were able to know we could pay it off within a certain amount of time, and it was a low to zero risk proposition.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah. And I say low because I don't know if you could ever get it to zero risk.
Right.
It seemed like almost zero risk last time, and then a pandemic hit, and that showed us there's always risk.
There's always risk, but the giving was
even with that,
tremendous.
Yeah, even with that, we paid it off 9 months early in the midst of a pandemic. So there is an element of we trust the Lord. We don't do anything on faith that is unwise.
Right. Yeah.
But we practice wisdom, discernment, financial, common sense. But we also, it's not only those things.
Right.
It's also trusting the Lord.
Yeah.
That this is His. If it's His project, He will fund it.
Yeah.
And He's the one that has cattle on 1,000 hills.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we could have a check for $4 million that would pay for the whole project.
That'd be sweet.
We don't know, but the Lord knows, and that's why there is an element of faith in that. So there's always that slight risk, knowing that God has to come through on the project, but it's allowing for that faith element without being unwise.
Yeah,
that's the balance that I think our elders and our council are committed to.
Yeah. So we were talking about before we start talking about like the finance side, we were talking about the importance of discipleship. And so right now on Sunday mornings, we have started our summer Sunday school series. And
great class too.
Yeah.
I didn't have to preach Sunday, so I was able to sit in on class. The only one I get to sit in all summer.
Right.
But.
Yeah. So that's something that we've been doing here for, I don't know, what, 4 or 5? Or probably
I think it was longer than that. Yeah, it was started when Ben was still associate pastor, and he helped teach and lead a lot of those.
Yeah.
So it's got to be probably 6-7 years that we've been doing this.
Yeah. So the one thing that I really like about that is it is from middle school through adult.
Yeah.
And that opportunity to connect younger to older to younger. I remember in years past, and we didn't do it last year, but the previous year, I remember adults coming up afterwards and saying, "This is, man, to hear some of our youth talk about what they're gleaning from Scripture and what they've gotten from this study." It was just as much of a challenge for the older generation that was hearing that as it was just for some of those high schoolers to listen to people that have gone before them.
Right.
But this study, the ruthless elimination of hurry, we covered really the first, not extremely long chapters, but the first 3 chapters, first section of the book, talking about the problem of hurry. So a funny thing about, we were talking, there was a couple passages I wanted to read during the class, and we had talked about the negative side of hurry is we tend to skim through things and gloss over things, and I wanted everybody to read the story about Lazarus and how Jesus was not in a hurry. He had something that he needed to teach. But what I told the class was, just go ahead and skim this real quick for the sake of time, and then and I know people were paying attention earlier because there was like this laughter and this kind of nervous, like, did he realize what he just said? Don't hurry, but he just told us to skim in a hurry. So, but.
Well, then later in the class, the same thing happened, right? You said we're going to run through these, and you had different bullet points of the
hurry sickness.
Hurry sickness. We're going to run through these really quick, and I don't know if you did that on purpose, but
I didn't do it on purpose. But it was like, it finally clicks. Like, that's just what came out of my mouth.
Yeah, we need a bell every time someone says hurry or skim or ding, ding.
That's right. Yeah. Oh man. So hurry sickness. I mean, I can identify certain areas in my life, but what in that session when we talk about hurry sickness, what are some of the things that really jump out to you?
Oh man. So there were 10 different symptoms I think he identified, and I think I was 10 for 10 on them. But it was just like anxiety and like hard to sleep. When you do take a day off, you're restless because you just feel like you can't relax because you have to be doing something, and just all those things. I think some of the more humorous ones were you're eyeing the checkout line at the grocery store, which one's the shortest, and trying to get into the lane that's the fastest, and you know what's funny, because I've read this book twice, I think now, and I've read other books that have made the same point, just in like a chapter or something. And actually, I think Ortberg, who writes the foreword, had a whole chapter on hurried sickness in one of his books. So years ago, even I read that, and every time I do that, I think, oh look, this is a symptom of hurry sickness, but I do it anyway, right?
Sure, right.
And then the times that I really think about it, I don't actually save that much time.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Max. Right. Like they're just, but you're so anxious to save and shave off every last second, so that you can get there as fast as possible. A lot of times because we're running late, because we've overfilled our schedule, and but is it really those 5 minutes? Is it worth the anxiety and the anxious spirit that we end up having, and snapping at our kids because we're trying to figure out which line is the fastest, or whatever. And man, I wish I didn't have to keep learning the same lesson over and over again.
No kidding. Yeah, I think it's that there were a couple points in there. I mean, one was the finding the quickest lane, and so you drive up to Portland or drive back from Portland. The challenge is being able to get in a lane and you just stay there, and not be tempted when you're in the middle lane and the left lane's just zooming past you. And how many times do you jump over to that left lane and all of a sudden you come to a stop and you go, that's the car I was behind.
I'm always watching that car, and it just mocks me the entire time.
Exactly. Yep. Like, no. Yep. Yeah. We had kind of a neat, neat, funny, I don't know. It was just kind of an aha thing this weekend. So we went up to Cape Lookout on Father's Day, and we were going on a little bit of a hike. And Corey got a new truck. He's still come up with a name. So I don't know. We might go with Frank the truck. So, but he got this truck, and he was just itching to get back home.
Frank is the best he could come up with.
It kind of is like Frank. It just looks like a Frank truck.
What would it constitute a Frank?
I don't know. I saw the glazed over look on your face. I have no idea. I can't explain it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Last week we heard about Mushu.
Yes.
Now that's a name.
That's a name.
That's a name. I had a truck that was named Chuck the truck.
Chuck the truck.
And my girls called it Chucky.
Yeah.
And then when we got the Kia Soul and traded in the Chuck, we had to stick with the whole Chuck idea still. Yeah. So, but the car was a little nicer and more sophisticated than the truck was. So it's not Sir Charles.
Sir Charles.
That's the truck. So, and Amy's car is Sparky 2.
Sparky 2. Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
So Frank. What would make a Frank?
I don't know. Just kind of it's a 1984 Ford F-250 diesel. Diesel.
I'm feeling the Frank more.
I mean, it just kind of looks like hey Frank, just a out country type.
Okay.
I guess.
For this, send me a picture. We'll post it.
Okay.
And we want to know, does it look like a Frank?
Yeah, it does. Look like a Frank.
We'll have it in the video playing behind us. So
there you go.
If you think this looks like a Frank, then let us know.
Yeah, let us
know.
Or
if you have a better name.
Yeah.
We can. Anyway, Frank the truck.
Frank the truck. So we're like, oh yes. So we were.
This is an example of not hurrying. We're just meandering through.
Just kind of going.
A topic.
Following the trail. So we were actually going a little bit of a hike, an area that we hadn't seen before, and Corey's like, let's go, I got to get back home. And we're like, and I turned to look at him, and I'm like, Corey, another 10 to 15 minutes on the trail here is not going to make that big a deal. And it was kind of one of those dad moments that I'm like, that totally makes sense. But if I was on the other side, I'd been like, what? Of course it's going to make a big deal. That's 10 extra minutes I get with my new truck.
Right. I get it.
Yeah, so we had a little not hurrying practice. And then what made it worse is as we left, we're like, let's take the back roads back to 101, through Pacific City. And it actually worked out really good. But
nice.
Yeah, it was kind of that unintentional not hurry. And then you kind of look back on it going, yeah, no wonder he was kind of frustrated but I mean, those are things you gotta learn.
Yeah, for sure. That's great.
Yeah. So great. I think we've had a really good start for our summer Sunday school. We've got each week we have somebody new teaching. So this week we have Mike Moore teaching and talking about the solution.
Nice.
So we talked about the problem. Now we're going to talk about the solution.
Cool.
So yeah, it's good.
Great. Yeah, we invite you all to come.
Yeah.
Don't need to worry about missing that first week. So
yeah, jump in at any time.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, we can't leave with we got two more things we need to talk about. One is our mission focus for the month. So every month we like to focus on a different ministry or missionary that we support. This one it's switched over to Slavic Gospel Association, which that we haven't had that before. So how is that tied in with who we're supporting through SGA?
Yeah, so we have had a long-term relationship with Pastor Sergey in Russia. He's a pastor of a church. He actually came here about probably 8 or 9 years ago and shared with our church. And we had a luncheon with him. He explained, he's the only church in a region I think is about 90,000 people, I want to say, if I remember right. And so just one church in the midst of this massive area. And totally centered on the gospel, much like our church wants to focus on kids and see them discipled. And so yeah, really, really cool ministry.
Yeah.
But there was always an issue on how do we get funds to Sergey, because he was just a pastor. He wasn't with any sort of umbrella organization, and wiring money had risk because it's going to Russia, and so they could tax them, and just only give him a little bit of the funds and keep the rest. And so anyway, we now have an opportunity through Slavic Gospel Association they're now the parent organization that he fits within. Yeah. We can send funds through them. It's secure. They provide the accountability, the communication with Sergey, all those things we were missing now can be done through the SGA. And Mike Moore has one of our, he's actually, we're going to be talking about him probably in a little while about joining our elder team, but he is taught Sunday school here many times and a small group leader. Mike and Susie have had a long-term relationship with SGA that predates any Sergey stuff. It was just they've supported SGA for a long time, and just really love that organization. They said, as we were doing our vetting as an elder team, he was able to give input and just said this is a great organization, great communication, and they're doing some really good things. So we're excited about partnering with SGA and then Pastor Sergey to continue to see the ministry of the gospel spread through Russia and in a region that is literally unchurched. It's the only church in that area.
Right. So that'd be, so we have information about SGA there on our missions wall and directions on how you can support Pastor Sergey through SGA, and would just encourage you to take a look at not only his, but just all of the ministries that we support as a church, and really prayerfully consider how to partner with us in that.
Yeah, on our missions page on the website, which we'll put a link in the show notes, and also our missions wall in the foyer.
Yeah, that's good. All right.
It's time for
Love It or Hate It. All right, as we wrap up this session, I've
got to hate it this week.
You have a hate it?
I have a hate it.
Not even a hesitation.
Nope.
Look at the confidence you're exuding.
So, I hate being wrong.
Oh.
And I especially hate being wrong when it's one of my daughters who figures out that I'm wrong. So for Father's Day, we went to put the bikes on the bike rack, drove down to Salem, parked at Riverfront Park, rode over the bridge down to Memento Brown Park, and biked all around. And so we're in the middle, and we had just made a little stop. I looked at one of the maps that was posted.
Yeah.
I figured out the course that we're going to take, and so off we go on the course. And Callie's out in front, and she looks back at me and says, "Dad, we just went down this path." And I'm like, "No, this path is going to lead out, and it's going to circle back around. It looks similar, but it's a completely different path." And she's like, "Dad, this is the same path." I'm like, "Trust me, I know what I'm talking about." 2 minutes later, we round a corner to a spot, a crosswalk that I recognized, and it was, yes, we had just been on the exact same path. Callie was right, I was wrong, and I totally had to eat crow.
Yeah.
And boy, Amy and the girls thought that was hilarious.
Sure they did, yeah.
And so I hate it when I'm so blatantly wrong.
Yeah,
But
those humbling moments.
Yep.
Oh, well. All right. Well, I have a love it.
Okay.
And so I was telling you, we went to Cape Lookout there on Father's Day, and just walking on the beach, the weather was perfect. I mean, it was
Nice.
It was cool, a little bit of breeze. That's a beach that I think I've only been to maybe 2 or 3 times, and just have forgotten how beautiful that area of the beach is. There's some cabins you can rent that are just
Nice.
off the beach, but it was the moment where there wasn't a lot of people, where we were walking, and just the sound of the surf and a little bit of a breeze and the smell of the pine trees and the salt in the air.
Yeah.
It was that moment you just kind of take a deep breath and you're like, this just feels right. And it made me wonder, man, how is heaven going to be where you just experience that peace and that just complete restfulness, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So love those moments, and unfortunately, because of our hurriedness, they don't come along too often.
They don't.
So
No. I can tell you one thing that heaven won't have that this earth has.
Yeah.
Obnoxious dads who tell their daughters to trust them when they're wrong. So
there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. None of that, and I'm praying no cantaloupe either.
Oh, Wes. No, you're gonna be enlightened.
Oh, is that?
And
is
you
that
will
what it is?
now appreciate.
Oh, it's gonna go the other way.
Wonders of cantaloupe and melons and all of that good
So
stuff.
my taste buds, the wrongness of my taste buds
That's right.
is a result of the fall.
It's the fall.
Not the fruit is the result of the fall.
No, the fruit is glorious and wonderful.
Wow.
Your taste buds are broken.
Wow.
Yeah.
There we go.
Anyway, thanks for joining us for another episode, and we will talk to you next week. Hope to see you Sunday at the class, 9 a.m. In the fellowship hall, and then 9 or 10:45 for our services. And don't forget to send questions in.
Yeah, new series kicking off.
So we'll continue the devotional guides as you pray about your participation in the building project. But brand new series called The Man Called Paul.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And looking at the life of Paul in Paul's own words. So
There you go. Awesome. Looking forward to it.
yeah, me too.
All right. See you Sunday.